Supports, a role known for protecting their teammates, healing them, applying crowd control effects, putting down wards, and sweeping them. Hi, I'm Toto and I'm gonna give you my non-murder boss support wishlist for Project L. First, let's clarify what group of champions I'm even talking about. There are characters like Pyke or Senna that were designed to kill people 1v1 as supports, or characters like Brand or Ashe that were never meant to even be played as supports but got pushed into the role by the shifts of the meta. These aren't the characters I'm talking about. I'm strictly picking characters that were designed to be helpful to their teammates, and unless they are going for troll builds, you don't have to be particularly fearful of them 1v1. They characteristically have highly efficient crowd control tools. Morgana's root duration is a meme for a reason. Or they have purely supporting skills like Soraka's Wish that heals every teammate wherever they are. I'm not gonna go too deep into the league abilities of these champions, cause a fighting game won't have stuff like while Rell is mounted, she gains 5% to 15% based on level bonus movement speed, which is only 20% to 40% based on level as effective for 3 seconds when she takes damage from non-minions and removed for 4 seconds when she becomes immobilized or polymorphed. You can read the rest of this damn Ferromancy ability if you want to, but I sure as hell don't. So anyways, I'm just gonna condense these down to she can ride horse.
What is the worth of a soul?
Let's start with the popular one. Thresh has appeared in a bunch of cinematics like Senna, Shadow's Embrace, Tales of Runeterra, Shadow Isles, No One Escape, or Thresh Unbound, A Night at the Inn. He's also arguably the main antagonist of the Ruination plotline since he manipulated Diego into creating the Ruination in the first place. Obviously, this leads to his prominent antagonistic role in the Ruined King game, a single-player turn-based RPG published by Riot Forge and developed by Airship Syndicate. I'm not entirely sure what to say about his lore since I don't want to give spoilers about the Ruined King, and I haven't finished it yet, so I'm not 100% sure about what is actually mentioned in the game itself. I think I'm just gonna redirect those that are interested in his personality to watch the cinematics I mentioned before, especially the Unbound one, because that's mostly about him as a person. Links in the description below. Other than just his presence in the lore and his cool design, the reason I think they can make him work is that he has a sight on a chain that he uses to attack people from afar and move them where he wants them to be. Honestly, it just kinda screams XLO from Guilty Gear to me. He has a hook, but his hook is not really a get over here type of deal. He does pull the enemy towards him a bit, but more importantly, he can pull himself to the hooked enemy. At full range, they meet around the 70% mark closer to the enemy side. This ability in League has a long and very noticeable startup animation, so it wouldn't be particularly bullshit in a fighting game. In my opinion, there should be 2 versions. One would be the normal horizontal version from League, the other should be one that hits those that try to jump the normal version. His other sickle-based ability is another pull, except it can also push. The result is simply decided by the direction of the ability. Obviously in Project L, one would be forward plus something, the other would be back plus something. The trailer used buttons named S1 and A1, so these would be something like 6S1 or 4A1. This one is also basically translatable 1-to-1 just like the previous one. Sadly, his non-weapon based abilities in League aren't really as projectile ready. His passive collects souls from dead things. I suppose this sort of can do this, cause projectile will be a 2v2, but if it's literally just a binary you have it or you don't situation, that doesn't sound very interesting. He can throw his signature lantern granting a shield to the people around it. His teammates can also click on the lantern to get put to Thresh. This ability obviously doesn't translate at all, but they would have to do something with the lantern. It's a way too iconic part of his kit to just get left out. They can just make it an attack or a trap that lingers at the target location, or they could turn it into an obstacle like the Happy Chaos clone. His ultimate, named the Box, puts down a box. Honestly, despite this being his ultimate, it's by far the least iconic and impactful of his abilities, and I have no idea what to do with it, so just throw it into the trash.
The sun always rises.
I'm somewhat biased here because Leona is my second most played champion, but I think she is by far the most easily adapted of the 5 anyway, so it's fine. I went into this knowing that the lore of the Targonian characters is by far the most incomprehensible to me, and her bio offers very little to work with. Anyways, here's what little I managed to gather. She was born as a daughter of the Solari, a tribe that lives on and around Mount Targon and worships the sun. Leona climbed the mountain and became the aspect of the sun, which makes her sort of a god. Honestly, I really don't care about the Targonian lore, since these characters rarely ever interact with anyone outside of their own circle. The only exception is the stuff with the sun discs and the Darkin. But I'm already going off on a tangent, so let's look at her fighting capabilities. First of all, just look at her! She's built like a tank warrior from a medieval MMORPG. I don't think I have to explain much about a sword and shield warrior to anyone, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Her other defining trait is her status as the aspect of the sun. Basically any sunlight or sunfire based ability you can imagine can be given to her without it being out of place. This is why I said she is very easy to adapt to a fighting game. She's like the fusion of a warrior and a mage. And no, a paladin is not the same. She can straight up shoot beams at you like a Dragon Ball character. Her league abilities are very practical in the game, but they are hardly what I would call complex. Her passive puts a sunlight effect on the enemies hit by her abilities, and her allies can proc those sunlight effects by attacking them. When the sunlights are procced, they deal magic damage and they get removed. I think this may actually work one-to-one in a game like Projectile, since attacks and assists could offer a reasonable amount of opportunities for this to actually happen. Her Q makes her next basic attack stun. This is completely useless since in fighting games, hit stun is a thing that's applied to basically anything that does damage anyways. Her W is a shield that grants her flat damage reduction, armor and magic resistance. Furthermore, it detonates when it runs out of its duration, damaging enemies around her. If the detonation hits an enemy champion, the shield duration is reset. Not as unusable as a stun was, but this ability needs work because defensive mechanics in a fighting game are very different from the ones in a MOBA. My idea for this would have to be something like an armored dash attack. Armored, as in the fighting game way. That gives her the actual damage reduction shield if it deals damage. It would also have to be a shield that blocks X number of hits rather than one that lasts for X number of seconds. Simply because once you hit your opponent, they likely wouldn't be able to do much for a while, so a duration based shield wouldn't be particularly useful. Her resends a Blade of Light forward that pulls her to the last champion hit by it. This could honestly work one-to-one as well. I'm not super knowledgeable about BlazBlue, but I'm pretty sure Hazama does basically the exact same thing. Her ultimate is the light beam I mentioned earlier. It stuns in the middle and slows at the edges. At first I thought this could be another one-to-one, but then I remembered Pet Shop from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Heritage for the Future. One of the main reasons Pet Shop in that game was stupid was his falling icicle attack. An attack that works pretty much like Leona's ult. You activate it and it falls after a delay. The problem with that is the way blocking works in fighting games. That icicle was an attack you could only block standing, but because it had a delay, Pet Shop itself could also hit low at the same time, creating an unblockable attack. I think scrapping this one for basically any random different sunlight beam attack is pretty reasonable. I mean, she can do anything with sunlight, it's not like we really have to stick with this one thing. If you want to see Leona fight, I recommend looking up her rather short but pretty cool fight in the cinematic named The Call. Like I said, it's pretty short, but that's the best thing we have. She also appeared in the New Dawn cinematic, but you shouldn't look at that one. That's a gameplay cinematic, not a lore cinematic. It's not good.
Yep, that tasted purple.
Lulu is a special case on this list. She's not here because I like her lore or her league gameplay. She's only here because of the potential she has. She is very much a character built around having annoying ass abilities. She can turn her enemies into small animals. She made herself gigantic in the Tales of Runeterra Don't Mess with Yordles cinematic. I'm pretty sure that's her only prominent appearance, by the way. She also has a pixie friend that can shoot the same attacks she has, and she can attach this pixie to both allies and enemies. Her lore is literally just a Yordle from Bundle City with bullshit magic. Not much to talk about, to be honest. Bundle City is the most lighthearted side of the Runeterra lore, so it's expected. There are Yordles with more to them, but those Yordles tend to live on Runeterra itself rather than Bundle City. Her abilities don't really translate to a fighting game, and I'm already dreading the amount of editing I'm gonna have to do for these videos, so whatever future me puts in the background of this is it. Like I said, Lulu is mainly here because they can go crazy with her prank fairy type character. I'm sure many of you have seen Multiverse's gameplay by now. It's been all over the internet and many characters, specifically the cartoon ones, have kits like what I imagine her having. A good example is Velma's ability to collect clues, and when she has 5, she can straight up call the police on you.
The tithe will be paid.
Nautilus is one of the characters that many FGC people that made rooster prediction type videos noticed. That's probably because he's a big metal dude with an anchor, a diving armor meant for ship salvaging specifically. But what they don't realize is that he's not just big, he's really big. That's because he only was a dude in a metal armor. Nautilus used to work as a diver, but the big metal coffin he is associated with is not his. He only ever used it once in his life. Bilgewater, the Serpent Isles, and the sea region around them have rules that everyone has to follow because the ocean hides things far beyond mere mortals. Let's be honest, when we combine gigantic tentacled creatures with the deep sea, H.P. Lovecraft's works will come to mind, for many. That's likely what Riot based Bilgewater's religious side on. One of the absolute rules every captain in Bilgewater will follow is to pay tribute, the tithe, a single coin to Nagakeburos, the goddess of motion, also known as the Bearded Lady or the Great Kraken. Nautilus's captain did so as well, but the coin started to run scarce and he ended up selling the ship. The new captain, the foreigner that bought the aforementioned metal cage to Nautilus, bought the ship specifically for Nautilus's diving capabilities. The man didn't care about the random shipwrecks, he came for something specific, so they set off for work once more, but the captain didn't pay the tithe. When Nautilus descended into the ocean, he was greeted by tentacles rather than shipwreck. He tried to pull himself out, clinging to the chains of the anchor, but it broke, hence the anchor weapon. He blacked out, and by the time he regained consciousness, he was no longer human. Now he hunts those that refuse to pay the tithe, like the captain that caused his terrible fate. I'm not gonna go into all that much detail with his abilities, because other than his hook, which is a get over here except they meet at the halfway point, I'm pretty sure everything else is pretty much unusable. But don't worry, there are lots of things a character with an anchor could do. Stuff like... or Jokes aside, he has an emote in League that makes him dive through air like it's the sea. He can control water as well, at least that's what seemingly happens when he uses his E or ultimate in game. Those skills would be toxic as hell if they were put in as they are, because the E has layered hits that travel outwards, so the same attack would hit both sides. The ultimate straight up follows you until it hits, and it's a delayed attack, and that's kind of problematic as mentioned earlier. I have no idea what his shield even supposed to represent, to be honest, so let's just ignore that one, and his passive is literally just Leona's Q, so the same problem applies here. Sadly, I'm pretty sure his only cinematic appearance is in the new Dawn, and like I said earlier, that's a cinematic based on League of Legends gameplay rather than lore, so it's not really the best.
One dead snake, one less petal on the rose.
Ah, Rell, such a disappointing character you are. I'm not gonna lie, I really dislike her League incarnation. I will get into that later, but the base concept of her character could be so much more than what it is in League. Her lore is basically that she was born into a low-ranking Noxian noble house and she's a ferromancer. You know, basically like Magneto. The Black Rose, more specifically LeBlanc, took notice of her and she was taken to a special magic academy backed by the organization. They were planning to train her into a weapon that one day would be useful against Mordekaiser. After all, his physical body is just a metal armor. I'm not gonna go into Mordekaiser lore, but he is one of the future world-ending calamities setup. At the school, Rell was instructed to fight against other children, but only once each. She never saw any of them again. The instructors also grafted marks onto her body that increased the power of her magic. If you know anything about the Black Rose, you know that they are not exactly good people. As it turns out, those opponents defeated by Rell got their magic extracted and grafted onto her. Those kids ended up in what you could generously describe as a state inspired by the Trunk Wall in Dragon Age. When Rell learned about this, she killed quite a few members of the Academy staff. As it turns out, her mother was actually the headmaster, by the way. She freed a lot of the kids and started her fight against the Black Rose and Noxus, because they just watched all of this without interfering or whatever. Yeah, that's a bit idiotic, considering Grand General of Jericho Swain is the ultimate Black Rose hater, and he would have absolutely interfered if he knew about what was going on there, but you do you, Rell. She's very much a case where the in-game abilities of the character are absolutely pathetic compared to the lore counterpart. For example, she can actually use her magic to heat up metal armor to the point where it starts melting. She can even rip a whole ass Orvin out of the ground. There was so much to work with, but we got strange looking Big Pants Woman and slowest horse in history instead. As I have said earlier, I really dislike her abilities. Luckily, Riot is apparently planning to rework her. I'm not entirely sure what type of rework we are talking about, but at least they are looking into it. Making new abilities for Rell is pretty easy, just like in the case of Leona. Lore-wise, she is unquestionably proficient in both a very versatile type of magic and her weapon, so fabricating new moves shouldn't be particularly hard. I mean, she can freely move metal to the point that she can turn her armor into a functioning horse in about a second. Based on just this, they could even make her into a puppet character. In League, her passive is that she attacks slower, but she steals armor and magic resistant hit. Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. Her Q is a stab that does damage and breaks shields. If she is tethered to an ally, they both heal too. Other than the tether bit, this is basically guaranteed if she is ever put into the game, simply because how basic it is. Her W is that terrifying wall of text I showed you all at the start of the video. Basically she has two forms, Mounted that moves slightly faster than other champions, and stupid Pants armor form that moves like half as fast as anyone else, in exchange for very slight defense buffs. Going from one form to another is also an active skill that applies a stun in slightly different ways depending on what form you are in. Regardless how stupid I think her Clown Pants form looks, her two forms are clearly the core of her gameplay identity. Originally they were planning to make her horse way faster, but then they kept tuning it down cause she kept leaving her ADC behind or whatever. That's why the final version of her horse form is not even particularly fast. Damn, this champion makes me sad. Anyways, Project L. Horse riding in a fighting game is a bit problematic to implement because horses are inherently not super agile creatures. So to solve this, my suggestion is to make the horse something she uses in specific attacks rather than making it into a full form. You know, something like... In the Progress Day Project L video, we have seen that they are willing to redesign champions, so I obviously hope they can make her big pants look cool. Just look at Android 21. She has the big pants and she's cool as hell. It really is not that hard. Her E is the tether, so it's obviously not even worth discussing, and her ult just pulls people towards her cause the magnet. Maybe, I guess, but again, hit stun is a thing, so these kinds of abilities that only really exist to deliver a crowd control effect are not really useful. Rell appeared in full Clown Pants glory in her own cinematic called Rell, the Iron Maiden. Clown Pants aside, she kills a dude by compressing the armor around his chest, so that's cool. So yeah, these are the 5 supportive supports I, as a support main, want to see in Project L. By the way, give us a proper name at Evo, please? Please? I'm tired of randomly running into stuff about some board game actually named Project L, or some weird ass shit that I honestly don't wanna mention here. Anyway, thank you for watching. Like, share, sub, all that YouTube nonsense. Have a nice day.